Okay, let's look at question 2b from lesson 6. This is a good question for division that shows how to simplify, or I'll go through how to simplify and how to state the non-permissible values. So what we do in division is, just like in multiplication, we want to have everything factored. So from my numerator, I need to factor out a 4. Okay. So that's going to be GCF of 4. So we're not going to do this. So take out a 4, and you would get y plus 5. Then in the denominator, you're going to factor out a 5. So from 5y minus 20, we could factor out a 5. And you will get y minus 4. I'm going to keep, for now, the division symbol in there, so I'm not going to change it just yet to a multiplication. And let's, from the numerator, factor out a 2, and we would get y squared minus 25. And then from our denominator, if you looked at that and I said, okay, well, how would you factor that denominator? Hopefully you see that that would be a difference of squares, right? So you could take the square root of y squared, and you could take the square root of 16. So that would be y minus 4 and y plus 4. The goal is to make sure absolutely everything is factored. So in this first fraction, there's nothing more I could do. In the second fraction, the denominator is factored, but this in the numerator is not. So we factored out a GCF, but then what we have remaining is y squared minus 25. That could further be factored by a difference of squares. So I could take the square root of y squared, and I could take the square root of 25. So I'm going to rewrite this entire thing again, and I need to factor out that. So I've got 4y plus 5. And then my second fraction, I have 5y minus 4. Again, I'm going to keep the division symbol. And in my numerator for my second fraction, I've got 2. And then I'm going to factor that y squared minus 25 to give me y plus 5, y minus 5. And in my denominator, that was already completely factored. So my denominator is y minus 4 and y plus 4. Okay, right now, it's actually sort of easy to look at this and say, what are some of my non-permissible values? So if I looked at this non-permissible is 4, right? So hopefully everybody would agree y cannot equal 4. If you put a 4 in that denominator, you're going to get 0 down here, which we can't have. So one of my non-permissibles is y cannot be equal to 4. Then I'm going to go to this denominator, and I'm going to say, well, what are the non-permissibles? This non-permissible, y cannot be equal to 4. I've already got it listed, so I don't need to list it again. And then this non-permissible is y can't be negative 4. So if I put a negative 4 in here, negative 4 plus 4 will give me 0. This entire denominator becomes 0, and you can't divide by 0. So far, my two non-permissibles are y cannot be 4 or negative 4. Basically, you could just say y cannot be plus or minus 4. We're going to write it at the end. So some students for non-permissibles, they think they just have to look at the denominators, which is true, but watch what happens now when we change this to multiplication. So we know that we don't divide in math, we're going to change that to a multiplication. So when we change that to a multiplication, this numerator stays exactly as is, 4y plus 5. The first fraction's denominator stays exactly as is, 5y minus 4. But then what happens, I'm going to change my symbol from a division to a multiplication. And in order to do that, these two fractions flip. So when you change a division to a multiplication, you take the reciprocal of the second fraction. So that y minus 4, y plus 4, that's written up top in my numerator. Now in my denominator, I'm going to write that 2 and that y plus 5 and y minus 5. Okay, the reason why I sort of went through this really slowly is because now I've got more non-permissibles. So this non-permissible, nothing changed, right? It was still that 4. But now if you look here, I have to take these non-permissibles after the flip. So you do your non-permissibles before the flip. So you take the non-permissibles of everything in the denominator, and then after you do your flip, after you change it to a multiplication sign, you need your non-permissible of this, what would make this 0 and what would make this 0. So hopefully you could see that these non-permissibles would be plus and minus 5. So I actually have 4 non-permissibles. Y cannot be equal to plus or minus 4. Y cannot be equal to plus or minus 5. Always state your non-permissibles, and then you could do canceling, okay? So when it's multiplication, we could multiply everything in the numerator and everything in the denominator. What I was actually missing, I should have put an equal sign here. I should have put an equal sign here. And then as I work through this, an equal sign. Okay, so in my numerator, I have got 4. There's an invisible 1 here if you want. 4 times 1 is 4. And my factors in my numerator are that y plus 5, y minus 4, and y plus 4. In my denominator, I've got 5 times 2, which is 10. And then I've got y minus 4. And then I've got the y plus 5, y minus 5. Now go crazy canceling. So let's see what cancels. Y plus 5 and y plus 5 cancel. Y minus 4 and y minus 4 cancel. And what I'm left with, so let's see what I'm left with. I'm left with 4 over 10, which reduces, right? So if you typed 4 over 10 on your calculator and reduce that, you would get 2 over 5. Because both of those numbers are divisible by 2. 2 goes into 4 twice, and 2 goes into 10 5 times. So that would reduce to 2 over 5. And then my factors that were left after canceling, I've got a y plus 4. And I've got in the denominator a y minus 5. And that would be your completely simplified answer. And then you always, once you've simplified, write comma and state your non-permissibles. Y cannot be equal to, so then I'm going to scroll up and say what were my non-permissibles. I had that plus and minus 4 and plus or minus 5. So there's 4 non-permissibles, plus or minus 4, plus or minus 5, and you would box that in because that's your completely worked through solution.